Thank you for your time, Mr. Atkinson. I'll take about 20 or 25 minutes if that's okay.
Sure, you're John, right?
I am, yes.
Okay, very good.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I've actually seen you a couple times. You came here uh, and you were at the bistro at the Bijou Theater rather, and then at the Presbyterian Church, and I think that's where you are back come Monday.
I think that's right, John. Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. You've got a very literate town, so it's always a pleasure. It's not always the case.
Well, it's been very cool. We've had a number of just fantastic writers come through. Doris Kearns Goodwin, David McCullough, my goodness, Ken Burns and his associate you. It's very and John Meacham. So it's really kind of cool when we get somebody like you who can take the time to come in. We love it.
Great, thank you.
If I may ask, just starting out, what can folks expect Monday when you make your appearance and talk?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the middle years of the American Revolution, providing enough background so people are grounded in where we are in that war. And I'm going to talk about it as a war. I'm a military historian, so I write about the battlefield and battles and the awful killing that is part and parcel of what was our first Civil War. I'll also talk about the British side of the hill. I spend a lot of time trying to understand why George III, our last king, is waging war against his own people for 8 years, as it turns out, across 3,000 miles of open ocean in the age of sail. And, my premise is that learning about the revolution tells us something about who we are, where we came from, what our forebears believed, and what they were willing to die for, which is the most profound question any people can ask themselves. So I look forward to it. I'll talk a bit, and then we'll have a conversation, because I know that's smart audience.
You broke up a little bit. I wanted to ask you, is there anything that's perhaps by Americans themselves misunderstood about the Revolutionary War?
Oh, I think a lot, John. That's another of my themes. The founders have obviously been heavily embalmed in reverence over 250 years, or condemned for their manifest flaws. And I think they're more complex than that usually. They're more nuanced. Washington is a case in point. I've spent a lot of time with him now over the course of the two books in the Revolution trilogy. So people misunderstand the nature of the war. It has, in retrospect, a kind of gauzy, faded lithograph quality. And it is not that. It is a bloody, nasty civil war with tens of thousands of deaths, with all the nastiness that every civil war brings with it. And it has repercussions that are far beyond the 13 original states. It becomes a global war with, France comes into the war, Spain comes into the war. I'm rolling on that in the encoder. And ultimately, the four continents and the seven seas. So I think most people don't understand that part of it.
In the course of during all of your research, and you may have been asked this before, but I'm curious because historians always seem to find this. Have you found somebody that you maybe weren't too familiar with, but you fell in love with, or you really became fond of in the course of doing these books?
Oh, yeah, that's one of the pleasures of having the privilege to do what I do. I find characters who have largely been lost to history, or most Americans don't know anything about. The best tactical commander on either side in the first couple of years of the war is Benedict Arnold, of all people. We know him better as a synonym for treason. Mm-hmm. He's, again, much more complex and nuanced. He contributes a lot. Washington thinks very highly of him because he recognizes he is a man born to lead other men in the dark of night. There are several characters on the British side, starting with the king, whom I find much more compelling than the tyrant that Jefferson calls him in the Declaration of Independence, or the sinister ninny who prances across the stage every night in Hamilton. A figure that some people know, but most people have forgotten, is Nathaniel Greene, lapsed Quaker from Rhode Island, who is really second only to Washington as the indispensable man in the Continental Army. Not only is he a good field commander, who Washington relies on a lot. But when things are darkest, in the winter at Valley Forge, where 2,000 American soldiers die of malnutrition and disease in the winter of 1777-78, Washington turns to him and asks him to be quartermaster general. Greene says, I don't want to be quartermaster general. Nobody in history has ever heard of a quartermaster, quote unquote. But he does it out of loyalty to Washington, to the cause, to the army. And he's quite brilliant at it. For a couple of years, he helps to save the army from dissolution. And then he's going to return to the battlefield. And the last couple of years of the war are almost entirely in the South. And Greene is going to be the foremost field commander during that period. So he's somebody we ought to rediscover as part of our commemoration of the semi-quincentennial.
Your Liberation trilogy took a dozen years or more to finish, and you're in the middle of doing your Revolutionary War trilogy right now. How do you start these projects, and how do you maintain the stamina to keep going? And I guess that's a question that one would ask other writers that get deep into a project, like obviously Robert Caro, or I'm a huge fan of the Beatles and Mark Lewison, who is deep in the middle of doing his own thing. How do you keep going? How do you mentally sort of go through all of that and schedule your life?
Yeah, that's a good question, John. Well, I'm older and slower, so I have no illusion that I'm going to be any quicker. And I did spend the better part of 15 years on writing about the American role in the liberation of Europe in World War II, and I'm 12 years into this project. I have no day job. That helps. This is my day job. The mystery of the next unopened archival box is something that gets me up in the morning. I'm an archive rat, and that's an important part of my propulsion system. The privilege of living with these characters now for a dozen years, with more years to go. Washington, Adams, Franklin, George III, Greene, it's a long list, Lafayette. And they're endlessly compelling to me. They're interesting, flawed, watching them grow or not, watching them fail or succeed, or both, is, to me, as a narrative writer, bottomless in its fascination. And so, the process of researching, which takes me several years for each book, and then the process of organizing it, outlining it, preparing it, and then usually about a year or so to write, and another year or so for the publication details, doing the endnotes and the illustrations and all the necessary requirements before publication. It keeps me engaged, and I'm hoping it keeps me engaged as we swing into the third and final volume.
And when do you sort of have a mental goal of when volume 3 would be done at this point?
The last two books took me 6 years. Again, I'm older and slower. I don't have any illusions that this one's going to be a lot quicker. I know my way around the archives more than I did when I started this, because they're completely different archives from those that I felt like I'd mastered for World War II. So I've got a leg up there, but nevertheless, it's a long, complex stretch of the war, leading ultimately to the peace and independence. If I started today, which I can't because I'm busy promoting volume 2, but I would think 6 years. I've got my eye on October 2031, which will be the semi-quincentennial of the Battle of Yorktown, which really marks not the end of the war, because it goes on for another 2 years, but it's really the turning point of the war. It's at that point, there's no hope for the British cause. So if I can hit that mark in 2031, which to me is only tomorrow, I'll be happy.
You may have addressed this before, and I can't remember, but in the course of your research, have you gone over to England as well for looking into the Revolutionary War?
Yes, I spend a lot of time there, actually. I'm going to the British Library in early July. I'm going back in September for a conference that Mount Vernon's holding in conjunction with the American Embassy there. I always spend a lot of time at Kew, which is where the British National Archives are. I did it for World War II. I do it for the Revolution. It's a fabulous national archive and a wonderful place to work. I was among the first allowed in to examine the Georgian papers when Queen Elizabeth II, who owns the papers of all four Georges who became king in the 18th and 19th century, opened those papers up to outside scrutiny as part of a project to digitize and to catalog the papers. And most of them belonged to George III because he was king for almost 60 years. And so in 2016, I was there for a whole month at Windsor Castle, just west of London, where those papers are kept. And every day I would show my badge to get into the castle, and I would climb 102 stone steps and 20 wooden stairs to the garret of the Round Tower, begun by William the Conqueror in the 11th century. And that's where the papers are kept.
Wow.
And it was, and most of those papers were previously unpublished. So it was a real opportunity to have a tactile sense of being in George's presence and to get to understand him a lot better than I think I had, and to go beyond the crude stereotype that most Americans have about this guy who's supposedly a tyrant and who's actually a constitutional monarch, a patriot king, a son of the Enlightenment, and much more interesting than our American stereotype.
Sorry, this may sound like a silly question, but did the Queen ever know you were there?
If she did, she didn't come calling, although by chance, John, it was the month she turned 90. And she spent that whole month, as she usually does, after Easter, at Windsor. It was her favorite residence. And so on the birthday, when she turned 90, I think it was April 21st, thereabouts, there was a big party in Windsor, and she and Prince Philip did a walk around in central Windsor, which is a charming little town. And so I was there with my Union Jack singing Happy Birthday, Your Majesty, along with all the school kids. I hope she saw me. I'm not sure she did. I was, 20 feet away from her. And it was a real opportunity to get some visceral sense of the relationship of ordinary Britons to the monarchy, particularly that monarch. And she's gone now, and there was only one Elizabeth II, and she was something.
I have been to Windsor and been to Windsor Castle, the parts that folks like us can go to, other than you as a researcher. I'm projecting my own sort of thoughts onto what you've just said, but I would probably have gotten great chills at the knowledge that I'm sitting here as Elizabeth passes by, and I'm writing about somebody in her past and in the great history of Britain and the future United States of America. That's very cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And, the chapel there in Windsor is where George III is buried. It's where she's buried. And it's, it's very evocative of this great sweep of 800 years of British history, of the monarchy, of a constitutional monarchy. And if those walls could talk, they would have a lot to say. George III spent the last decade or more of his life in Windsor when he was stricken with mental illness and really was utterly incapacitated. And it became, he had 15 children, and
wow.
He and Charlotte, the Queen, adopted Windsor as their primary residence outside of London. It was a great place for him to be. Farmer George, he was very interested in agriculture. A great place for him to ride horses, which he did almost every morning, and a great place to raise the kids. So you really have a feeling of being where George walked and rode and thought and brooded, because he certainly did some brooding there as the war got deeper and more troublesome for Britain.
Last question. You're the son of a career Army officer. You got an appointment, I think, to the military academy, to West Point, but you ended up studying English at East Carolina and also then became a reporter at the Kansas City Times. By the way, I was a copy boy for just a couple months while you were there, and I thought it was very cool.
Oh,
but I just wonder, do you ever think back today and go, wow, Atkinson, how did you end up doing this? Did you expect all of this? Was it kind of something in the back of your mind, or have things just kind of come along and you've been like, That's an interesting path. I think I'll take that.
Yeah, John, is so how often happens to most of us. I think you kind of blunder into it, and serendipity and fate or whatever takes a hand. I did think that I wanted to be an Army officer like my father, and then, I was about to get on the bus to go to West Point,
Huh.
Class of 1974, and finally, in my thick 17-year-old brain, thought, I don't really think this is what I want to do.
Uh-huh.
At that time, it was all men. I wanted to go to a college with girls. Everybody had to be a BS in English, in engineering. I wanted to study literature, and you can do that now at West Point. You could not do that then.
Hmm.
And of course, it's the middle of the Vietnam War, and in 1970, you couldn't tell where that was going, but it wasn't
Right.
going well.
No.
And so I wasn't terribly enthused about that. So I ended up purely by chance getting my first newspaper job in Pittsburgh, Kansas, if you know where that is, down in the southeast corner, and then ended up in Kansas City. I'm pleased to hear we were there at the same time.
Yeah.
And, I really liked the people that journalism attracted, particularly newspaper newsrooms attracted, and found that I liked it and was pretty good at it, and ended up going to the Washington Post for some years, and all the while tending to write frequently about military issues because I was an Army brat and knew the culture, knew the lingo, knew the acronyms, and on a couple of occasions took leave from the Washington Post to write books on military themes. And then in 1999, yeah, 1999, left really for good. I went back a couple times to go to Iraq and Afghanistan for them, to write books full time. So, we have a meandering path in our lives often, and I've meandered along with it.
Mr. Atkinson, that was the last question I had, but if there's anything else you want to add, please feel free. I truly do appreciate the time to speak with you, and I've enjoyed and appreciated the times before when you've come here.
Thank you. I'm very much looking forward to it. Jerome Melson has become a friend of mine.
He's a good guy.
He's a good guy, and serious about history, and he rounds up a lot of other people in Knoxville who are serious about history, and you can't ask for more than that as an author.